Constitutional Court has reserved its judgment in a case involving Cyril Ramaphosa's donations for his ANC presidential campaign in 2017. Now, investigative unit amaBhungane is challenging the Executive Ethics Code, which was found to be unconstitutional, as it does not require or did not require members of the executive to disclose donations for internal campaigns. So how important is this case ahead of the ANC's national conference set down for December? Let's speak to amaBhungane's Sam Soul, who joins us via our video link this morning. Sam, good morning. Great to have you with us on the program. So some background for our viewers this morning. The Executive Ethics Code was found to be unconstitutional because it does not or did not require members to disclose these donations made for their own internal elections, right? But the High Court in 2021, yes. Sorry, Sam, then said
that's correct.
That there's no retrospective effect that would be applied, and that's what amaBhungane in part had a problem with.
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
So we challenged the code to the extent that it did not provide for disclosure of internal party funding for internal campaigns. Mm-hmm. The High Court found in our favor eventually. There was a bit of toing and froing to the Concourt and back. The High Court found in our favor, but this would not be retrospective. In fact, it would not even affect December because what we've asked for is for the Constitutional Court to confirm that view of the High Court. And that's what we argued this week, and the Constitutional Court still has to decide. But we asked them to give the President 12 months to change the code to bring it in line with what we say should be covered, which is there should be disclosure by members of the executive when their campaigns receive millions and millions of rands, as we saw in the last election. ANC election, because these things have a huge impact on our politics.
Yeah. So the fact that it would have no retrospective effect, according to the decision by the High Court, that would mean that the source of the President's CR17 campaign as well would remain undisclosed.
Look, I think there's probably very little of that information that hasn't actually come out into the public domain. A fair amount came out in the court case between the President and the Public Protector, and a lot else was actually leaked to the media. The President's bank statements were leaked, etc. So I don't think that there's a great deal about the money that flowed into that campaign that is not known. Of course, we don't know about the money that flowed into Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma's campaign. But no, it would not be retrospective. It's very rare that legal challenges have retrospective effects because that can throw up all sorts of anomalies. Generally, the law is changed going forward.
So are you not asking the Constitutional Court to make it retrospective?
No, and that would be thrown out. I've got no doubt about that.
So part of what the Pretoria High Court also said was that it would also be suspended for a period of 12 months, right? To allow
That's
for the
correct.
defect to be corrected, and that would then mean
Correct.
that this December's elective conference wouldn't be included.
That's correct. Look, I think these are long-term battles. We're seeing, the huge impact that the disclosure of party funding has started to have on our politics. The fact that the parties have to now disclose funders that give them more than 100,000 rand. In fact, they're pushing back against that. They're trying to say that's too strict. But I mean, the reason why we got involved in this, the reason why we support disclosure of party funding, is that I think across the world there's a malign influence of money in politics, and unless we can see who is exactly funding who and for what purpose, then there's all sorts of stuff that happens under the table. Even potentially the latest allegations about the president and about money being found at his home in 2020. This is being used for all sorts of political reasons. But the fact is, politicians receiving money places them at risk, places them in a position of conflict of interest, and this is what we're trying to ameliorate and expose.
And it's not just for the big fish, people like President Cyril Ramaphosa, you mentioned Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma as well, but it should be for ministers, for deputy ministers, for MECs, across the board.
That's correct. So the Executive Members Ethics Act does cover all of those executive positions, from ministers to premiers to MECs. So we think that this kind of disclosure should be required for, all politicians. In other words, if the president is an incumbent and he now faces a challenger who's not a member of the executive, in terms of the code, that person would not necessarily have to, the president's opponent would not necessarily have to disclose. That would be unfair, and obviously we need other legislation to plug that gap. But we don't think that because there's still another loophole that we shouldn't attack this problem and sort this problem out.
And for people who might be wondering this morning, Sam, why this is so important, this mandatory disclosure, it's one of many steps that we need to put in place to act as some sort of action against the kinds of corruption we're seeing in our country.
Absolutely, and the way in which money is able to dictate politics and dictate policy. We want, to the extent possible, to force our politicians to serve the broad public interest and not serve, private special interest groups of one kind or another, not be bound by favors that they have received, whether within the party or within the broader community.
Sam Sol, let me thank you for your time this morning. Incredibly important story, judgment reserved in that case in the Constitutional Court, and of course we're watching it quite closely. Sam Sol is with amaBhungane's investigative unit.